I think Taylor Swift will have had a dramatically bigger impact on Hyatt hotels in 2024 than the Olympics will.
Really?
Yeah, I really believe
That's a damning statement. Best travel advice, hack, even secret when it comes to business travel in particular?
Carry on, never check.
Never, but you're a man.
True, and there's a difference.
Is the customer always right?
No.
Hello, I'm Ruth Umo, leadership editor and host of Fortune Executive Exchange. Almost 18 years as Hyatt CEO, Mark Hoplamazian sits down with us to discuss why the hotel chain is only wooing luxury travelers, his plan to compete with juggernauts like Hilton and Marriott, and Taylor Swift's monumental impact on hotel and travel. But first, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below to share your thoughts on this conversation. Mark, thank you so much for joining Fortune Executive Exchange. We are delighted to have you. Welcome from Chicago.
I appreciate that.
And you said the weather is not too different from Chicago, so.
Very comparable right now.
Much more skyscrapers, I can at least say that.
That's true.
Well, let's start from the very beginning. I'll start off with a softball question. You were appointed CEO of Hyatt Hotels Corporation in December of 2006. Roughly 2 decades later, what are the biggest changes?
Oh gosh. Well, I guess the most obvious change from an outsider's perspective is we're a dramatically larger company today than we were then. If you track from the beginning of Hyatt's history, which was 1957, from 1957 until 2006, we had grown to have something like 100,000 hotel rooms. And then the next 100,000 rooms came in the subsequent 10 years, and the third 100,000 rooms came in the subsequent 5 years. So our acceleration of growth was pretty pronounced. And now today we're approaching 350,000 rooms. We don't measure, frankly, rooms as the key dimension of measure because we're looking at where in the world we're located and how we serve our guest base, which tends to be a higher end, higher echelon traveler. So we want to make sure that we're growing in a very intentional way, not just growing for growth's sake. But that's one major difference. Second major difference is that Hyatt, from its very beginning, had a spirit of a familial culture. It was a family culture. The Pritzker family founded the company. So there's a direct connection to a family environment. And I would say the relationships from the very beginning were more emotionally based, not transactional. You know, some organizations, the relationships between colleagues or associates is like very transactional. I need this from you. Great, we're done. I'm moving on. At Hyatt, it's much more personal than that, and people get to know one another. They work together at various properties over time. Even in the corporate office, there's a sense of camaraderie and familial culture that exists. And so that hasn't changed, but what we tried to identify, and we finally put our hands around it in 2015 or thereabouts, is what is purpose? Like, what's our purpose as a company? And you know, as you know, we like everybody else define purpose around why you exist. So our why is to care for people so they can be their best.
How do you go that one click deeper and care for the customer? How do you get to know them on that deeper level?
Empathy. And so I've been pounding away on the practice of empathy since really I started. It's really a matter of listening very intently and not listening to respond to someone. You know how sometimes you're in a conversation and you're talking to someone and you're listening to them, but really what you're doing is forming your own response. And that detracts from true understanding, deeper understanding. So I talk about listening to understand, not listening to respond. And that practice of empathy, that moment, or extra 3 minutes that it takes, makes all the difference in the world. And I can give you hundreds and hundreds of examples, but you know, we've had situations in which a mother and child check in. Why are they there? They're there because the chemotherapy center that is suited for their child's cancer is down the street from this hotel. That person needs different things, and we need to make sure that we are there to help support that parent's needs. They're not there for some big celebration. They're there to be comforted. They're there to make sure that the car is absolutely on time so that they make their appointment. They're there to make sure that if they need extra things in the room to help comfort their child, that we got that there, right? So that's really different than, the couple that's there to attend a wedding reception or something. So it sounds simple, and it is, as long as you keep it human.
Let's dig into that just one bit more. You mentioned the importance of empathy, certainly being an empathetic CEO. You mentioned the fact that you have fostered this familial culture. A lot of companies say, we're one family. I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but certainly a familial culture where you value human connection over purely transactions. Are there downsides to that, where you're just so focused on the human connection, maybe you're not focused as much on the financial aspect? Are there any downsides to that?
What comes along with having a emotional connection with someone or a personal connection with someone is a sense of responsibility to that person. And if you extend that actually across the whole organization, what you find is a collective sense of responsibility to the whole Hyatt family, which means you have to really do a good job. Like, people are counting. When I wake up in the morning, I think there are over 200,000 people around the world who are counting on me to do a good job today. It doesn't mean that when I engage with my colleagues, it changes my interactions with them, but I wear that responsibility. As a commercial matter, I have to do a good job, but people are personally counting on me. And that elevates your sense of focus and responsibility and accountability. So in many ways, it's actually, it enhances it. The other thing people have asked me is, how do you reconcile a purpose like caring for people so they can be their best when you might have to let we draw a distinction between being nice to someone and being kind to them. Being nice is sort of maybe pulling punches or not giving people feedback or having it be pleasant, as opposed to caring enough about them to give them feedback that is designed to help them, but it's also a reflection of what the company needs at that moment. And the most severe and painful example I can give you is during COVID. And this was April of 2020, and our business had shut down. We were down 95% overnight in demand, and we were closing. That we had no idea how long this was going to last. And we ended up planning for and executing on a pretty significant reduction in staff. It was unprecedented. COVID in the travel industry, but that kind of action was taken. And I wrestled with it mightily. It was a very emotional time for me.
You would think that you wouldn't, because it was, as you said, such an unprecedented moment, one that was really out of your hands. It feels a bit different from, let's say, last year, 2 years ago, where we saw sweeping layoffs. Those seemed more transactional, but COVID didn't feel that same way.
Yeah.
It felt like a godly, otherworldly event, if you will.
It was one of those kinds of events. It didn't make me feel any better about it.
Yeah.
So it was intensely emotional, no matter that, yes, it's something that was out of my control. It's not like we overhired a bunch of people because we weren't thinking straight, and then we had to let them go. That's not good. That is really not executing and caring for people so they could be their best. But our commitment was to reconcile our purpose with that by way of thinking, well, okay, just because for the survival of our company, we really didn't know how long this was going to last, and in order to survive, we really had to cut back on costs dramatically. And I mean that literally, like it was an existential moment. We thought, okay, we have to do this. And really what our commitment is to rebuild the company in whatever form that looks like once we understand what the end of this pandemic looks like. And our goal was to try to hire as many of these people back as we could, because they were all valued members of our Hyatt family. And we provided over $18 million of direct financial assistance that we pulled together with members of the Pritzker family, because a lot of people didn't have enough support from the government wherever you were in the world. So this was on a global basis. We set up a technology platform so people could stay connected, even if they were off Hyatt systems. We also recommendations for people. I even got on the phone with a number of people's prospective bosses to give them recommendations, specific recommendations. It was that, and it wasn't just me. So that's the nature of what we did to sort of roll up our sleeves and say, we can do this the right way and really, really help care for them, even though we have to make this horrible decision. And we've come out of that with a stronger commitment to our purpose than we had going in, which really surprised me.
To your point, I mean, it's no understatement to say that the pandemic really decimated the hotel industry, the travel industry. I mean, we recently interviewed former Walmart US CEO who moved over to Air New Zealand. And he said, look, we went from making $100 million a week to absolutely nothing.
Right.
4 years out of the pandemic, what's the hotel industry looking like?
The hotel industry, generally speaking, is returned to pre-pandemic levels. So we were back to the levels that we were at before the pandemic. Some markets are stronger. The leisure market's been the strongest so far, although business travel is really coming back in a significant way now. Yeah. So we're seeing companies return in a significant way to individual travel, but also meetings. A lot of people were talking about revenge travel.
Right.
What we're seeing today is not revenge travel. What we're seeing today is a persistent prioritization of personal travel for personal well-being. That's the broadest definition.
Across socioeconomic demographics, or are you finding it, I mean, you talk about leisure travel, luxury leisure travel, and so one would presume that they have the financial buttress to be able to afford that.
Yes. Right? So yes, in our case, that's the category of travelers that we serve. It's a global phenomenon. It's happening everywhere. But the great thing about the hotel industry is that you've got brands and different segments of price points that allow people who are going to visit family and friends to be able to find a hotel that works for them. And so we help to support this underlying human dynamic. And that underlying human dynamic exists for all human beings. It's not by income strata that people have prioritized this personal travel and this connection. In the United States in 2021 and 2, and in China in 2023, and in India in 23 and into 24, people in those countries set to work on discovering their own countries. So the travel across the United States, because people couldn't go to Europe in 21 and 22, say from the United States, they were rediscovering America or discovering it afresh. National parks, spending the time outside. It was also a lot easier to think about being in the open air than inside a building. But we saw the same exact thing happen in China and the same exact thing happening in India. And I think that's fantastic. I mean, I think that's a really, really wonderful thing to have happen because you experience the richness of your own culture or your own country. So I think that's really special. Now you're starting to see cross-border travel really pick up. Americans are going to Europe in increasing droves. Yes, in part to see Taylor Swift concerts. Just saying. It's incredible.
Financial and economic boon across countries.
Across the globe.
Across the globe, absolutely.
She has had the most incredible impact on the economies. I mean, in every market in which she's had a concert, thankfully we have hotels in almost every one of those markets, pretty much every one of them. The business has been off the charts.
Yeah.
I think Taylor Swift will have had a dramatically bigger impact on Hyatt hotels in 2024 than the Olympics will.
Really?
Yeah, I really believe
That's a damning statement.
No, she's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
I mean, people have traveled halfway across the world to see her. So it's quite remarkable. And there again, that's people want to feel good. They want to have an incredible experience of an incredible artist and see it live.
You mentioned earlier just the richness and robustness of meeting in person. You mentioned the meeting we had earlier today. Yeah. I'm biased. I'm a remote work evangelist. Where do you fall on the scale when it comes to your employees?
For me, well, first of all, let me start off by saying that our hotel level employees are in the hotels every day.
Yep.
They don't have a choice. And so I honor them, and I have great respect for what they do. There's a wonderful sense of camaraderie amongst the teams. And so it feels good when you're there, but it means they have to be there. And I would say I'm a believer, personally, I find great satisfaction and great warmth and engagement if I'm with people when I'm working with them. I'm very happy to accommodate travel because almost every one of my direct reports travels pretty extensively. So yes, I'm accustomed to doing things by phone or by Zoom. But if you gave me a choice, I would want them in the office and present. I would say that the return to office is, it's been slower than I would have hoped and expected. I'm still a believer that that's the best form and format to engage with fellow colleagues and to learn to have these little interstitial moments during the course of the day where something will occur to you and you'll walk to the person to their desk and say, hey, can I bug you for a second? Or they'll walk into your office or whatever it happens to be. We don't have formalistic offices. Everything's glass in our office. So, people, there's a lot of interaction and that you miss. And it might be a passing thought that turns into a really interesting idea that needs to get pursued that might have just passed and never been engaged in.
Is business travel back? Certainly it's back compared to the pandemic where there was no business travel.
Yeah.
Compared to 2017, 18 years prior. Is it fully back to the same extent?
China's ahead. Europe is ahead. The US is still behind, but the US has increased transient travel, business transient travel, individual travelers every month for the last 14 months. Year to date through April, I think for us in the US, we were up 6%. Interestingly, large corporation travel is up 12. So overall business travel, individual business travel is up 6. So it continues to rise. My prediction is that in the US, it will be back to pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year, with the rest of the world already ahead of where they were pre-pandemic. Group travel, meaning big meetings and conventions, is back at a revenue level because prices are higher to 2019 levels. That's 5 years ago already. But occupancies still lag. So it's really been a rate-led recovery from a revenue perspective. And what we're seeing now, though, is demand is increasing into next year and into 2026 and for the remainder of this year. So we think occupancy will also recover. So there's going to be a tailwind for business travel, broadly speaking, individual and for meetings, as far out as 2026, which is, we have visibility to 2026 because we have bookings. Like a third of our total bookings for 26 are already on the books. And we have good visibility into rates that people are paying and their demand. So
and those travels, are they within said geographic boundaries or are they global as well? So let's say US travel, you said isn't as, well, you said China and Europe, certainly it's exceeded previous levels. Are they staying within the geographical boundaries or are they moving globally?
Yeah, so I would say the vast majority of what we're seeing right now is within countries.
Okay.
But part of that has to do with the fact, just take China. International airline schedules into China were cut back dramatically. They're nowhere near where they were pre-pandemic. But airlines are now scheduling more and more schedules, more routes back into China. And there's an expectation, I can't say that I have a solid sense of this, but there's a travel that you need to have cross-border meetings. So what kind of meetings are we having? Well, first, social, lots of weddings. There were a lot of weddings that got deferred during COVID. But the second thing you're seeing is even Western brands, take Porsche or other luxury car companies, when they're doing a brand launch, they're doing it at a hotel. And so we've had a number of those kinds of brand launches or introductions of new products by other either apparel or footwear companies And they're holding those big convenings where they're bringing in all of their dealers around the country. That's the sort of business that we're seeing more and more of in China today.
I want to circle back to that, but beforehand, Hyatt is known as the luxury hotel, right? That is your niche. And as I think about you discussing your demographics, your clientele, it harkens to mind an interview we recently had, Neiman Marcus' CEO, saying, look, we're focused on the luxury shoppers. We're done wooing the less than wealthy. And that's the way I'll summarize it. Is it constraining a bit to focus solely on luxury clients?
Yeah, I would say we're not focused exclusively on luxury clients. It is
But you're not a budget hotel either.
No, we don't play in economy or budget or lower price, the lower end of mid-scale or something like that. But we have extended our product line below where we have traditionally been by one segment. It's known in the industry as upper mid-scale. This would be a hotel in which you're spending maybe $100 to $120 a night, which is below where we currently operate. It's the next segment down, and we've already launched in China. Our brand there with a partner in China is called Eurocove by Hyatt, and that is growing very quickly because of the nature of where those hotels are located, which is really in dense urban areas in major cities. In the United States, we launched a new brand sustain higher rates, but they also can't sustain higher build costs. So we gathered a group of developers, real estate developers, around a table, and we went through a very quick agile process. We're expanding agile across the entire company. And within the space of 5 months, we went from first meeting to launching the brand, which was unprecedented in our industry. But we did a tremendous level of fast cycle testing and learning and experimentation, real time. We repriced the construction costs every week, and we made trade-offs real time. And that kind of rapidity of development work is something that's a big unlock of value for us, and we're taking the entire company in that direction. You hear about other companies trying to apply agile at scale. It's not easy. It's a mindset shift. You've got to push down decision making. You've got to lean into a growth mindset. You've got to be prepared to experiment in rapid cycles and fail a lot, but learn from those quickly and keep moving.
When you say push down decision making, what do you mean by that?
We have individual development plans at Hyatt, and I do one for myself. And each of the last 2 years, my one big thing, we ask people to say, just define one thing that you're going to change behaviorally. And for 23 and 24, my one big thing is I want to make less decisions. So anything that hits my desk that's requesting a decision from me, I look at it and I think, do I really need to make this decision? Could not this decision have been made somewhere down the chain so that it's not getting pushed up? And so I'll go back to people and I'll say, why is this on my desk? If you're trying to delegate up to me, that's a problem that we need to talk about. Because they should be responsible, feel like they're responsible and accountable, therefore they go and make the decision and get moving. Because it takes extra time for me to take a look at it. And of course, the other thing that Agile helps to break down is polishing something to the point where they've spent too much time preparing the beautiful deck for the CEO. Like that to me is save it. Like we can just. Or the second issue is that they're not clear that they actually have responsibility and accountability, which is also something that you need to address. But so pushing down decision making allows people who are actually closer and closer to the customer and the guest to make decisions. And that's actually that's magic. When you get people who actually know exactly what that customer or guest interface is about, or the owner interface, and you enable them, unleash them to go make those decisions, I'd much rather have people come and ask for forgiveness than permission. Like, let's go. And it really speeds up our ability to be responsive, which I think is increasingly critical in today's world.
Certainly within New York, when you think about the hotel industry, it's very much synonymous with travel. But again, come back to New York City, We love a good rooftop bar, have a nice cocktail. I'm partial to an espresso martini.
There you go.
So are you thinking about ways to localize hotels? Make it have community members come in rather than a destination place. Have it be somewhere where, those in the neighborhood are actually attending, making use of the lobby, making use of the hotel bars, the rooftops, et cetera.
Yeah. It works the best in lifestyle hotels.
Yeah.
So we own a brand called Thompson. Almost every Thompson hotel in the country has a rooftop bar. We actually have 2 Thompsons in New York City, one and the Beekman downtown. It happens that neither of those have rooftop bars, but almost every other Thompson in the country has a rooftop bar. We do have the tallest hotel rooftop bar in the city, though. The Hyatt Centric in Times Square on the 54th floor has a magnificent bar because the views are incredible. It's south facing. I agree with you. And so really keeping it, first of all, extending yourself to the neighborhood and actually making sure that locals understand that this is a place for them to be is really critical. And having a vibe and a feeling that this is super inclusive and that I don't have to be a guest there and it doesn't feel so formalistic and kind of like off-putting to walk in to go to a rooftop bar or to a bar in the hotel or a restaurant in the hotel. Restaurants and hotels in New York City have been more and more challenging because the proliferation of amazing restaurants, independent restaurants, has been unbelievable. So what you'll find in a lot of hotels is they've reverted to something that is more like a very, very high-end grab and go. Danny Meyer, who's a close friend of mine,
we interviewed him just 2 weeks ago.
He's fantastic.
Absolutely fantastic.
I'm a huge fan of Danny's, and we have so much alignment around what great hospitality looks like. He created a concept called daily provisions.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So we can actually create something. It's not daily provisions branded, but it's like daily provisions in that the product that you're getting is really high quality and it's a great experience, even if it's not a formal dining setting. So you'll see a lot of hotels moving in that direction more and more because that's actually, that fits the use case that's needed and still gives you great quality.
As you know, again, cities like New York, San Francisco have tons of office space, an exodus of residents. Thoughts on office to hotel occupancy?
Yeah.
Something you'd explore?
First of all, yes is the answer. We see it in Europe and we see it in the United States as well. I think there's a flight to quality amongst office tenants. They want to be in the more modern buildings. They want to be in the buildings that have great amenities. And that leaves existing office stock maybe less attractive. Now, converting an office building into a hotel is not trivial because it's not designed for having bathrooms every 8 feet or 10 feet or 12 feet, depending on how big the room bays are. So that means you're creating a lot of infrastructure within the building to make it into something that could be a hotel. It's doable. It has been done. What you had seen back in the 90s and 2000s, the early 2000s, was depending on where you were in the cycle, you had residential buildings converting to hotels or back to condos. You saw a lot of that, but less so for offices. But more and more discussion about how to do it and how to do it efficiently and effectively. So yes, I believe that there will be office to hotel conversions. There have already been some, and we participated in that more in Europe than the United States so far.
Why Europe specifically?
Europe hundreds of years. So the density is really high, and sometimes zoning makes it really difficult to actually tear something down and build something new. So you repurposing buildings becomes more and more, I would say, necessary if you want to have a location that's adjacent to the central business district or to a really vibrant area of the city. And so that's really the principal reason why.
You've previously said that you acquire smaller brands with a loyal following. How do you cultivate said loyalty?
It's experience. And I think more than anything else, it's the human engagement. For many years, as we were exploring our own purpose, I said, the industry has sucked humanity out of hospitality. We need to reinstill, reinvigorate the humanity of hospitality. And so first and foremost, it's that feeling. It's that feeling like you're dealing with real human beings, not automatons who are following a standard operating procedure, or worse, you're dealing with someone who's staring down at the screen and not even looking at you in the eyes when they're checking you in or engaging with you. So we've invested behind technology that allows you to actually not have to stand behind a desk at all. You're not typing on a keyboard. You have a touchpad to check people in. But most of all, you get to stand next to them and engage with them. And that to me is super powerful. So I would say, understand the culture of these different brands that we've bought over time. When culture fits, anything is possible. When it doesn't fit, almost nothing is possible, because everything becomes a zero-sum game if you have a mismatching culture. So one of the key things that we underwrite at the very beginning, aside from what's the customer base that this brand serves and does it look familiar to us, or is it an extension of our customer base, is what about the culture? What about the sense of care that they extend to their guests? Is it similar? And can we leverage that? And is it going to be compatible with what we think is really, really important and what we hold dear? And I can tell you, our biggest acquisition was Apple Leisure Group, ALG, in 2021. We closed on that deal. And over again, as I got into the company after we were able to, once we closed, the cultural similarities were stunning. So I mentioned to you earlier that care is at the center of our purpose. Their number one value was care. On property, I had visited some of their properties in 2018. We bought it in 2021. I came away, I stayed overnight at a couple of different properties, and I came away feeling like this sense of human connectivity was alive and well. I've been in the business long enough where you can really feel it quickly. So, and I talked to some of the frontline staff and then some of the management, and just listening to how they prioritize what they do and how they engage with their employees convinced me that there could be a cultural fit there, and it really turned out to be brilliant. So I think that's partly why we hit the ground sprinting with Apple Leisure Group.
Does that human connectivity change globally just based on cultural distinctions?
It is manifested differently, but it is a core basic human need and experience. And I'll tell you, you might look at a culture, I'll just pick Japanese culture, right? Some people experience Japanese culture as quite formal and removed. They feel distance. Part of that's a language barrier, honestly. But part of it's the formality that in a formal setting, in a luxury hotel or in a full service, really nice hotel, there is a certain comportment that people show up and practice. First thing, over the last 17 and a half years, which is how long I've been in my job, I've seen a change and a shift. People are coming out and being much more proactive in sharing their views and their thoughts and even their emotions. And secondly, there's a tremendous appreciation for feeling cared for. There's this sense that people at my office actually care about me. And that basic sentiment of extending care, and I look at it as sort of selfish, because when you care for someone or you express gratitude towards someone, it does something to them. It has an impact on them, but it also comes back at you. It's one of these things where expressing gratitude to someone always makes you feel better. Caring for someone always makes you feel better. So in some ways, it's sort of like, it provides me energy when I do that. Gratitude is one of the most powerful things that you can practice. We have Global Gratitude Day, where we extend for free. People can We set up a platform and guests can extend their gratitude towards anybody in their lives. I oftentimes have open meetings and said to people, we're going to take a minute, or I've ended meetings this way. I just want you to close your eyes for a minute and think about someone you're truly grateful for, and take another minute to just write to them right now and just say, whatever, a short message. And the feedback that I consistently get from people was, that was amazing. It was an old friend, just popped into my head. And the response I got from him was like an incredible reunion. And I was really moved. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. So there's this sort of like virtuous circle that occurs when you extend yourself as a human being. That's why when people get into service conflict, service issues, there's a not so much recently, but several years ago, there were many examples of bad things that happened on airplanes where people were forcibly carried off or stuff happened. And I think it's not, everyone was saying, well, the culture at that airline is terrible. It's not that. Sometimes people just forget to be human first. And they are thinking to themselves, what do I need to do? And what was I trained to do? Not, I'm a human being and this person is having an issue. I need to engage with them, like just engage. And I think that it goes a long way.
Is the customer always right?
No. And unfortunately, in our case, so I was having this an email back and forth with one of the members of our loyalty team yesterday, because I was really was not happy to see a guest who forwarded I'm not going to mention the platform, but forwarded a link to someone basically selling benefits that they were entitled to given their status in World of Hyatt, our loyalty program. And I said, that's completely wrong. That's not supposed to happen. And she wrote back and said, so here's the situation that you shared with me, and we've addressed that. But so you know, this is less than 1% of our entire membership base that has ever engaged in anything like this. So I think that customers are not always right. Like that person who did that actually violated, I would say, beyond the terms and conditions of our loyalty program, they kind of violated trust. So no, that's not right. So no, they're not always right. But when it comes to having been denied a hearing, like having been heard and seen, they are right. Like if what happens is people click into response mode, again, listening to respond instead of listening to understand, and they get upset about it, and sometimes they get very upset about it, I'm with them. Like, I think it's disrespectful not for our colleagues not to truly see them for who they are and listen to them and be responsive.
You mentioned, you've talked at length about human connectivity.
Yeah.
I'm going to do 180.
Okay.
AI. You
Yes.
might have heard about this technology.
I've heard about
just
it.
a bit. How are you thinking about that? How does that lock into your focus on human connectivity?
At the beginning of this year, we came to the conclusion that we were going to form a team on this specifically as an enterprise matter, not in sales, not in digital, not in HR. For me, highly cross-functional, slightly bigger than a team that would be optimal in size. It was 10 people.
What would an optimal size team be?
More like 6 or 7. Like that's a faster, you can get stuff done more quickly. But I deliberately wanted a selection of people from across different functions. And we needed someone who understood our data environment really, really well. So we started to work on what would an AI strategy mean? What are the key outcomes that we're looking for? So one of the byproducts of behaving in an agile way is to focus on outcomes, not on activities. So the outcome is a change in behavior that you're looking for, that you're looking to try to effectuate or effect. And so we started with that and said, we want our colleagues, for example, to feel more cared for because they are in more control over their own data. and they have quick access to it on their own. Well, what does that mean? Well, instead of having to call a helpline to find out how many sick days you have or PTO days you have left or how much vacation time you have left, it's available to you through an assistant, for example. We want our guests to feel more enabled to plan their own travel, to have access to the resources they need, and thereby stay with us more. So there's a commercial link to that. We want, for example, our corporate customers to feel that they're getting very well-crafted and personalized responses to RFPs that they've issued for meetings. And we believe that we can use AI to actually do all of those things. One of the key things that I want to do is take as many administrative tasks out of the hands of our colleagues in the hotels so that they can spend more time engaging human to human. And AI has the ability to actually help us do that.
Could it make front desk jobs obsolete?
I don't think front desk jobs will ever be obsolete.
You don't?
No, I don't think, I mean, first of all, I think it could be that the functions that they perform will shift and change, where they can actually help guests to identify experiences that would enrich their stay or other assistance, not the administrative tasks that are currently reposed there. So to me, I think, and having optionality is critical, so I don't believe everybody wants to bypass the front desk and go straight to the room with their digital key. We offer that capability today, but not everyone wants that. Why? Well, sometimes they need some special assistance. Sometimes they need to confirm something. Sometimes they just want a recommendation on something. So I think that what we're able to do is actually enrich the experience as opposed to just execute the experience. And I think AI will help us do that. So it's
do you
more
think
of
millennials and Gen Z care as much about that human connectivity, or do you think that we just grew up in this digital age and we're fine to bypass any humans, take our key card, put in, give all our data, the algorithms, and go directly to our hotel room and have some computer come up with a list of things we should do on vacation?
So I think it's really impossible to generalize
Sure.
for a whole generation.
Sure.
I would say that among millennials, it's a very broad age range. So I think it depends on where you fall in that age range. I don't think Gen Zers are prone to be disconnected. They're prone to actually want more. My own kids, I've got a 27-year-old, a 24-year-old, and a 20-year-old. The vacations that they get the most out of, they tell me this, I'm not putting words in their mouth, are where we're in the wilderness and there's no cell connectivity, because they feel like it's almost like the weight has been taken off their backs to not have to have their phone in their hand, but they also get to connect with each other. And to me, aside from as a parent, that's like music, right? You love to hear that, but it's also true that I feel the same way. So our very best holidays have been remote places.
We published our Fortune 500 list. Some of your competitors, Marriott, Hilton, are on that list, even Airbnb, which only just debuted on the list last year. However, Hyatt was number 528, pretty darn close. What will it take to make the Fortune 500? How are you thinking about accelerating growth? And just for context, the revenue threshold for this year was $7.1 billion.
Well, I guess if it's just how do you make the list, it's to be over $7.1 billion.
Well, of course, but what are you thinking in terms of strategy?
I don't think that that's an outcome by itself from my perspective. It's really making sure that we are building a compelling brand.
But the two aren't mutually exclusive.
They're not. And our growth pace, we've been leading the industry in growth rate for 7 years in a row. And I described to you earlier the growth trajectory that we were on. We have leaned more heavily into leisure, lifestyle, and luxury, but we're also now extending down that one segment into upper mid-scale. The combination of those two things will drive significant revenue growth, because everyone's focused on net rooms growth, but it's actually net fee growth because fees are revenue for our business. So I would say that's the primary driver in our minds. The second thing that's true with respect to Hyatt is that we have been selling down real estate, our hotel real estate, at a very significant pace. When you own a hotel, you consolidate all of the financial results for that hotel, including the total top line of the hotel. When you sell a hotel, that revenue base drops significantly because you're removing the totality of the revenues that you're collecting from owning that hotel, and what you're left with are the fees that you get from managing or franchising the property. So we've actually been sort of reducing our revenue line even as we grow our earnings and we grow our market cap and we grow our free cash flow. So we're driving margins much higher, free cash flow much higher, but our revenues are coming down in part because we're selling real estate. Now, we are significantly completed with a significant sell down that we had committed to. It doesn't mean we won't sell some of the remaining assets that we have on our balance sheet. I'm 100% sure we will. But our fee growth and therefore our revenue growth is at a high pace. And I think we will continue to lead the industry because we have a really strong group of brands. So personally, I think it's a matter of a few years of compounding at the kind of growth rate that we are at now. And you will find us on that list.
Yes, well, if and when that happens, we'll certainly bring you back.
I would love that.
We'd love to be delighted to have you. I want to talk about, obviously you have fellow hotel competitors, then there are competitors like Airbnb. Brian Chesky said not too long ago, I think he appeared on CNBC in September 23, saying that hotel prices are rising. It seems as though everything's rising, food prices, gas prices, certainly hotel prices. At what point, especially when you're dealing with luxury clientele, how do you determine when a price is too high? I mean, what's the limit there?
It's really, I mean, we are like every business, it's the byproduct of supply and demand. Yeah. So to a certain extent, it's self-operative because you can observe what's going on around you. Our key consideration isn't to maximize rate in the absence of everything else. It's to actually continue to have more than our fair share in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And that means that we have more loyal guests. We're offering them more experiences that they pay for and buy because they find value in it. Mm-hmm. They spend more in our hotels. So if you look at our luxury, they do tend to spend more for their rooms because they are in some measure staying in suites and higher price rooms. They're also spending more on property than non-members by a significant margin, like 40% more. So those guests are voting with their feet. They are loyalists and they understand what the benefits are of staying in a high property. And so to me, it's the whole equation of that revenue picture. It's not just rate by itself. But I would say it really is a byproduct of supply and demand. So I think that there's a natural limiter on that.
Right. Capitalism at its finest. You mentioned the fact that you're going one level down in terms of your consumer. Why stop there? Why not 2 levels, 3 levels down? Because
the actual consumer that we're expecting to serve in those markets that we don't have representation in now are largely our existing member base or customer base. It is also true that we will attract some new customers that are in the adjacent sort of income level. We did a lot of research in 2022, and we determined that over 70% of the time that people who are our members are not staying in our system, are staying in a hotel where there isn't a Hyatt property within a 5-mile radius, and that hotel is at a lower price point. Now those things are coincident, meaning they go together. The reason there's no Hyatt property in that market is because we don't offer a product at that lower price point. And that's what's able to be built and justified in those markets. So we found 133 markets just in the United States. We have 0 representation that would be perfect for this new brand that we launched. And our idea was to actually focus on the network effect so that our own guest base could find us more and more when they're traveling. One of the biggest complaints we get from our loyalty members is, I love staying in Hyatts, but I can't find you everywhere. and I want to find you in more places. And that was really the impetus to that. So in many ways, we're not necessarily abandoning or saying, no, we're going to actually hit a dramatically different demographic profile. It's really serving our existing customer base better and also attracting an adjacent customer base. So, and as we do that, I think we will find more opportunities to expand in that tier.
Last question for this particular segment. You can find many a Hyatt within the U.S. You do trade competitors internationally. How do you look into expand globally and really make a presence in other international markets?
Yeah, so we've really focused heavily. In China today, we have about 120 hotels open and operating. We have about the same number in development. So I feel good about our presence and representation. We've had a pretty tight screen around what we will approve for development in China because we want to maintain the quality and the cachet that Hyatt represents there. So that's really been a highly disciplined approach to what we've done there. Same in Japan. Actually, same in most Asian countries. In Europe, we've expanded by about 80% in the last 5 years, which is a lot. A lot of that was in resorts in the Balearic and the Canary Islands. We're opening, I think we may have already opened or we're about to open our first all-inclusive resort on the beachfront in southern Portugal. We have other projects underway in Greece. So we've expanded a lot in Europe, but we need to accelerate that further. And we've taken some actions towards that. Germany and the UK are probably the most important outbound travel countries I can't say in the EU anymore, but in Europe. And they are big feeder markets for the Balearic and the Canary Islands. So we did a deal where we effectively franchised with a family called the Lindner family, the Lindner Hotel Group. It was 30 hotels in Germany. The ability to actually add that much representation, like presence, across so many markets in Germany in one fell swoop is magic. Like that is really important to the network effect that I mentioned before. And that's really philosophically what we're trying to do more and more of. So we're going to continue to focus on where we can add in bigger increments. And the other thing I would tell you is that we are the last major multi-brand, multinational company to start franchising extensively. So we manage directly about 70% of the rooms that we have around the world, and we franchise 30%. If you look at Hilton, for example, they manage 20% of the rooms and they franchise 80%. In Europe, franchising has become one of the key sources of growth. And so we've now shifted. It's not a massive pendulum swing, but we're now getting into franchising, but we want to maintain quality. So we're doing it in a way that's very deliberate, but we are opening up new markets. We were never in Scandinavia before. Now we have hotels in Scandinavia as a result of doing a franchise deal. And that same phenomenon is true in places like Germany, the Lindner deal I just mentioned, and others. So I think we'll find ways to grow faster because we are underrepresented everywhere.
I want to pivot. Well, these are final two sections. One is the next to lead segment where we're just focused on leadership strategy. So I want to know, how has your leadership style changed over the years?
A lot.
Well, you now push decisions down, that I know, the last 2 years.
Well, I think, when I joined Hyatt, I was coming out of a private equity environment and a family office environment. And, the things that you practice in leadership in those kinds of environments tend to be very utilitarian and very hard driving and very time constrained. So you end up with, let's say, limited patience for diversions or the niceties of actually engaging with people along the way. I've moved from there to a much more, a longer term perspective where you're actually, every engagement I have with people at Hyatt is an opportunity for me to help them grow and for me to learn, and hopefully for them to learn too. So I went on a learning tour when I first joined Hyatt because I really didn't know the underlying business. I didn't grow up in the business. I had put the company together so I could tell you everything about the legal structure, the financial structure, the tax structure, the domiciles, anything about the mechanics. But I could tell you nothing about what it was like to operate a hotel, and what do you do in relation to guest experience? What about distribution channels? None of that, or loyalty. So I went to school, and ignorance was actually my big superpower, because I asked a lot of stupid questions. And two really important things I learned early in my career: there's no such thing as a stupid question. And secondly, when people understand, when they feel it, that you're being sincere and not messing with them, they become all of a sudden your champion. They're like, I'm going to help you. And of course, people in the hospitality business are very nice. So I got a lot of people coming towards me and saying, wow, this guy really doesn't know what the hell he's doing. We got to help him. So I learned a lot very quickly. I felt really drawn into even further the culture. And that's really what led me to understand what that learning journey is like for many people. So that's a big, big dimension about my journey. I think my connectivity to empathy-driven business came in two dimensions. One is a very, very long-time mentor of mine always said, and it's like sage advice, you have two ears and one mouth, you should always use them in that proportion. But the second thing that happened is I got to know Ginny Rometty, probably the best corporate leader I've ever met in my entire life. She just wrote a book called Good Power, which I highly recommend to you. But she talks about being in service of others. And when you read what she means by that, I would interpolate that or interpret it to mean care. Why? Because she spent a huge amount of time practicing empathy and understanding the needs of the client that she was about to go visit. So when she showed up, she was super informed, deeply informed about the company and what their needs are and her observations about it. That changes the dynamic of, and I'm talking about throughout her career, not just when she was CEO. And that's incredibly powerful. And by the way, if you look at what she did to transform that company, it has been transformed. And for a company of that scale and size that had well over 100-year history when she became CEO, to be transformed in about 10 years' time is stratospheric. Like she belongs in the pantheon of the best CEOs that has ever lived. And so that my experience with her has really, I think, cemented my confidence that empathy-driven leadership is really, really powerful and yields tremendously strong financial results too.
That's very different than the early days, Jack Welch, GM style leadership. Do you think that's outdated? Do you think that there's room for the two, some sort of mixture?
There's so many dimensions of
when
leadership
do you need to
models.
be callous? Yeah.
Yeah. So couple things I would just observe.
Yeah.
First, I think GE had a practice of rotating people every 18 months through a new job because they wanted to see, how they did and so forth and so on. I, having now been managing a business for a long time, I don't see that as a good idea at all. And by the way, GE doesn't anymore either. They abandoned that idea. So I think some of the talent ideas that were implemented during that time didn't really set them up well. I'm not going to get into the debate about whether Jeff Immelt is the scapegoat or the responsible for everything that went wrong at GE. I'm not going to comment on that. What I would say is that I certainly know who chose him as his successor. And Jack himself said one of the most important things you can do as a CEO is to choose your successor. So something didn't happen correctly there.
Let me piggyback off of that, because you've been at Hyatt almost 20 years, not saying you're eyeing an exit anytime soon, but any good CEO worth their salt is in constant communication with the board, talking succession planning. What skills, what traits, what personality, what are you looking for in a successor? Or, how do you characterize a good and effective CEO for the future?
I think growth mindset is at the top of my list. You have to have someone who's really thinking broadly and thinking forward.
Easier said than done.
Yes, but you can tell, there are more and more ways in which you can identify whether people have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And I think part of that is adaptability is so critical in today's world. This is cliche now, because everyone says it, but the pace of change continues to increase. And so if you're not prepared to be agile and adapt and pivot and stay in learning mode constantly. For example, I think Satya Nadella really did honestly transform Microsoft from a know-it-all to a learn-it-all culture. I'm borrowing that phrase from a publication. It's not something I made up. But he talked about growth mindset extensively when he first started, and he meant it, and he executed against that. And I think that's in part why you see a Microsoft that's reinvigorated in a completely new way. I think Larry Culp, who's, I think, again, part of the pantheon of greatest CEOs, has done an incredible job at GE. I think he just brought a very open mind and said, let's take a really fresh look at all of this and really think through how we can do this in today's world with the competitive dynamics that are underway, and how do we take that forward. So those are the kinds of attributes that I think are the most important. I don't believe in, quote, seeing around corners. There's this, like, you have to have like some kind of crystal ball that works really well all the time. I don't believe in it. People ask me all the time, so what contingency plans do you actually have written up and on the shelf and ready to pull in case there's a recession, in case there's another pandemic? My answer is, I spend no time trying to map out a plan. I spend all of my time trying to build capability within the company to be agile and to be adaptable and to be able to respond no matter what happens, because we can't predict what's going to happen. And if you need any evidence that we can't predict what's going to happen, nobody that I know, not one person, had a plan that they could pull off the shelf if you had a global pandemic. Nobody. So that is completely out of left field. So my view is, spend less time trying to do scenario planning and spend more time doing capability building.
Well, that's all consultants do. Scenario planning.
I have no comment about it.
All right. You received a lot of great business advice, clearly. Conversely, worst business advice that you followed, anything immediately come to mind?
I think I'm not sure that I received terrible business advice that I followed, but I think one thing that I've been blessed with is the ability to actually operate Hyatt through a period of time when we were under a lot of pressure to go faster, to sell down assets. The common sort of that which was in favor on Wall Street was to go asset light. So, and our competitors had gone asset light, although Hilton just went asset light, in the relatively recent past. But we were the smallest of the companies, and we needed to use our balance sheet, like every other hotel company. And I had to hold by that I had to stand by that belief and execute against that, because we needed our capital base to help us grow faster, which we did. But we were under a lot of pressure, and I think our shareholding structure plus a belief at the board level that this is a business in which we operate these hotels for decades, not quarters. And we're in business with people for decades. So this is a very long-term industry, and I think I've had the benefit of running it as a long-term industry, with a long-term strategy in mind. And of course, you have to ultimately produce results in order for you to keep your job and for the company to thrive. But I do feel blessed having been able to really operate with a vision for the future that is not primarily driven by the flavor du jour or the next quarter dynamic.
Final segment, rapid fire, short, pithy
Okay.
answers. How often do you travel per year?
How many times do I travel per year? Oh, at least once a week on average, because some weeks I will do 2 separate trips.
Your favorite Hyatt globally?
Okay, impossible to answer that
Like
question.
picking a favorite child.
Can't do it.
Destination vacation you're going on this summer?
I enjoy fly fishing, and there's a small group of us that are all happen to be in the travel business, and we go a different place every year. This year, I'm going to Greenland. I've never been to Greenland before. There are no Hyatt hotels in Greenland, unfortunately.
Opportunity for growth.
Could be. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. Do you always get a king size bed when you travel?
When I'm traveling by myself, I almost always have a king size bed. I have stayed in hotels where they were out of kings, so I stayed in a usually our twin bedded or dual bedded rooms are queens. So yeah, I've stayed in queens before. I've also stayed on a cot, on a portable bed when San Antonio needed a room that night, unexpected trip, and they were packed, and they had a parlor room, which was like there's a bedroom here and a bedroom there that were lock-offs, and then they had a parlor room in the middle, like a living room, that you could connect to either side to create a suite. But that parlor room was empty. And I said, well, just pull a cot in and I'll sleep there. So I've slept on the cot.
Well, I've got to ask, why are the sheets tucked so tightly into the bed? You need superhuman strength just to get in.
I have to tell you that I agree with you. Although I've been making my own bed for a long time now, so my wife appreciates that. But I do find myself tucking the sheets in, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, because I've done a lot of rotations with our housekeepers, and you know, it gets drilled into you. I mean, those housekeepers are so proud of their work. So if you don't execute, like if I'm shadowing someone or actually working side by side with them, and I don't do it right, they're not too happy about it. Like they reprimand me, like, come on, it's not that hard. Like, figure it out.
So you're a pro at this point.
Oh yeah, no, I can make a great bed.
Biggest room service order you've ever made?
Oh, it has to be when I've had meetings in my room. So at one point, I think we had dinner for like 10 hotel owners, and I decided to do it in my room. But then they sent an entire team up because it's a big shindig. So yeah, I can't remember how much that cost. So I'm sure it was a lot. But that was big. That was by far the biggest one.
Last three questions. Oddest room service order the Hyatt has ever received, or concierge request?
One of our guests in Toronto a decade ago wanted a 1961 Bordeaux, and we had to go and figure out how to source a bottle of this particular great wine, and we did. We were then quite taken aback when we learned that the guest, he was staying in a suite with a kitchen in it, that the chef that was traveling with him used it as a cooking ingredient for the lamb dish that they were preparing.
Oh, goodness.
As opposed to sitting back and enjoying a beautiful sip out of a glass. So we were like, wow, that's really, they needed that 61, whatever it was. I was like, wow, I just never heard of that before. That's a new one on me.
Great story. Last two questions. Best travel advice, hack, even secret when it comes to business travel in particular?
Carry on, never check.
Never. But you're a man.
True, and there's a difference. I understand. But you know, interestingly, when I started following this, and I also wanted to not be beholden to getting my suit pressed every time I showed up somewhere. That means I'm not. Early on in that sequence of events, 17 years ago, oftentimes airlines would force me to roll up the hanging bag and stuff it into my suitcase. As soon as I got on the plane, I'd take it out and hang it up. So, but let's face it. I mean, you can't. No matter how good of a folder or a roller you are, if you've got a really beautiful, delicate dress or something like that as a woman, it's really hard to pack and not check, so that you can actually use your carry-on for something that shouldn't get crushed.
And presumably you're not bringing 5 pairs of shoes.
Definitely not. That's another major issue. I can be indiscriminate sometimes and bring too many shoes. That's actually the worst thing.
Oh, is it?
Because they weigh a lot.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they take up a lot of space. So you're right. Shoes are tough.
Last question. What has you excited about the hotel industry as you look to the future? Where does innovation come in here?
I think the thing that I'm most excited about is the ability to bring young people who are maybe out of work and out of school, so we refer to as opportunity youth, into our industry. We've been working on this since 2018 in a formal way. We've hired over 5,700 people, and we continue to work hard on this because I feel like it's one of the things that we can do that's going to have the biggest impact in the world. Just take Chicago. We have a very massive divergence in opportunity set and in income and wealth in different neighborhoods in Chicago. But the same is true in every major city in the United States and around the world. And the biggest joy that I've seen, that I've experienced, is bringing, like in Rio, when we opened the Grand Hyatt Rio, we hired a huge number of, and we focused on young women because they have the toughest situation if they're living in a favela. So we were trying to bring as many young women out of the local favela into our hotel employment. And we were really successful in doing that. And we've done the same thing in India, but let's stay close to home. New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, they all have young people who are really not a part of the workforce and they're not in school. And our industry is one of those magical places where you can come with almost no skills, start working, and then build skills and build a career. So that is the thing that I continue to be the most excited about.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for joining us on Fortune Executive
Thank you,
Exchange.
Ruth.
Such a delight.
Appreciate it.
Of course.